Hi everybody, my name's Tai Amy Grauman and I'm an associate artist at the Citadel, and I'm here today interviewing Tara Beagan. And I just wanted to start by acknowledging that I am currently home on my territory in Treaty 6, which is the home of the Cree, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, Stoney, and Cree Iroquois, as well as the Blackfoot and the Métis who occupy this land. I am personally Métis, Cree, and Iroquois from Ardrossan, Alberta, and this is my territory that I'm on. And Tara, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, Tai. Hello, everybody. My name is Tara Beagan, and I'm Lakapmach and Irish Canadian, Nixie half-breed, and I'm here in Mohkinstsis on Mississippi territory, and now also Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda and Métis, Alberta Métis Region number 3. Whew. So I'm a visitor here too.
Awesome possum. Great. And so Tara, you run your company Article 11 with your partner in life and work, Andy Morrow.
Andy Morrow.
And I was just wondering how Article 11 started.
Oh yeah. Well, it's one of those things, you know, like as makers, as you well know, Tai, when there are people who are actor beasts, and often they're kind of, in a way, forced to put up with the system the way that it is. Yeah. And then there's those of us who write and act and direct and produce and do all of the things, administration, and that makes our lives much more difficult, but it also means that we have to deal with a lot more bureaucracy that does not honor Indigenous ways of being, which of course are as complex and multitudinous as our people are. What Andy and I were really confronting about, I guess it was 7 years ago that we founded the company, was that we were increasingly disillusioned by the way that theater is administered, the way that it's produced, the way that it seems to kowtow to a culture of poverty, to a kind of culture of no. So often as a playwright, the first thing that I hear as feedback from any given producer is a no about something. No, you can't put a full truck on stage, you know. No, you can't castrate people on stage. No, you can't have a bunch of dead birds fall from the ceiling. And we were like, we say yes. So, and I really learned about yes from the first time that I saw Andy's work as a designer. And at the time, we just met the night that I saw his work for the first time. And I was blown away by his artistry. And I started to feel yes again. So fast forward to 2013, I was actually cutting his hair in our kitchen. And we're thinking up a name for our company. And so we were just kind of checking out different sources, you know, poetry that we love, visual arts that we love. And we actually simmered right down to policy. And we looked at the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and just kind of started fishing through not only that massive document, which is very beautiful and surprisingly basic, but also the history of it and how when they tried to pass it at the United Nations in 2007, there were a few countries with a very powerful Indigenous presence that said, no, we don't want to do this. And Canada was one of them. So being, you know, artists who've had to contend with bodies like CAEA, which is frankly more difficult to work with than INAC, we decided to adopt the 11th article from the UN's declaration. And that is Indigenous people's rights to practice their own traditions, their own culture into the contemporary, to evolve it in the way that they want to, and to have the resources to do so. That's a paraphrase, but it's how it became the foundation of our company, and it defined exactly how Andy and I already prefer to work. So we created our own company so that we could engage Indigenous artists who we admire and respect and who wanted to be mentored, and to make sure everyone gets paid over scale, and to really aim to pay well enough that when artists get offered work in like indie film, they don't have to choose solely on a monetary basis, because so many of us have dependents or loved ones who we just want to support more. I mean, community is an Indigenous way of being, so we're never earning money just for ourselves. It's always bigger than that. So we really endeavor to pay more than that. So that's what we do, and it's tricky and it's always hard, and the work is already hard, but we're also trying to educate arts boards and boards, and it's endless. So it's really activism. Just making the work is activism, but we feel more rooted in our artistry now because we have our company to kind of be our home and to house other people whose voices we want to be able to platform and lift up. So that's why we did that.
Amazing.
You are.
And for those of you watching this who don't know, Andy and Tara are like one of the greatest love stories ever, in my opinion. Those things that people told her Tara she couldn't do, like castrate someone and put a truck on stage, she's done both of them. So it's great. And so as a playwright, when you're starting, where do you start a play? Like, where does it come? Where do you start?
I think, well, really, I mean, the beginning of all stories started way before any of us were here.
Yeah.
And I think our job is very much being in a state of readiness. If we're, I feel like I'm fortunate because I get those stories offered to me. So sometimes they arrive quite whole, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's like just a clarity of one image or a moment between two characters or the landscape that the thing is going to unfold on. There's always some anchor that gets me in and like compels me towards that story. So, I mean, it can vary from, one of my earliest works, Drury and Izzy, that I foolishly promised to then AD of Native Earth, Yvette Nolan. I promised it to her by the end of the month. I hadn't started writing it yet, but I didn't know anything yet. I was like, yeah, I could get you drafted at the end of the month. She was like, okay. And she's probably like, yeah, I dare ya. So of course I had to fulfill that. Like I threw down my own gauntlet, so I had to pick it up. And but I was really gifted because I was given gift. I'm not gifted, I was given gifts because I had all these dreams about it. And what I poured out about 40 pages or so. And then I was stuck and I didn't know what those two sisters did next. And had a brutal nightmare that night, but the gift of that nightmare was Freddie Seven Horses arrived for me. So he started to like be the snowball of the story. So those are that's, I don't know, my ancestors have done something right because I was able to be open enough to receive those things. So sometimes they're quite whole. Sometimes it's one character that I feel like I know really well. Sometimes it's one line. Sometimes it's because of an actor who I admire, who I'm like, oh, I want to see that person do this thing, or an interaction between two actors who I admire. Like for Honor Beat, the spark of that was Monique Mojica and Margot Kane telling hilarious stories about, the old days of theater, as if, they're not even old, but just being able to fly on the wall when they were telling these great stories. And so, yeah, inspiration comes from everywhere. And I think it's about wanting to be open to it, being able to be open to it, and and sometimes it's just nothing. So so then I shift into we shift into input mode, like binge watch TV shows, read 4 books at once, listen to audiobooks while you fold your laundry, like whatever it is to like intake and just like feel fed, so that's something else. So whatever it is that needs to come out of you gets nourished again, and then that can come out.
That's so interesting. I've never heard of that input mode.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important.
Yeah.
And as artists, like, and someone like you who always has a very, very packed work schedule.
Yeah.
And like my Andy, he'll feel guilty if he does one day without, he'd be like, oh no, I only sent like 5 emails and, I did the lighting plot today. I'm lazy. And I'm like, no. You sit and you watch a movie uninterrupted, and that's good for you. Like that's nourishing. Totally. Feed the beast, right?
Do you have any go-to movies for input mode, or is it always different movies?
It depends. Yeah, I do have go-to movies. It depends if I'm like, I have a cry stuck in me. If it's a cry is stuck in me, then it'll be Of Mice and Men, like the Gary Sinise directed.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great. And I think part of why it's great is because he and John Malkovich are theater practitioners, so they really get characterization and the rhythms and tempos of story and the detail of storytelling and how quickly something can take you out if something's wrong. I think that movie's almost flawless. Like, it's so good. I also really love, if I just like am feeling like a small town Alberta gal who doesn't get seen properly, then I'll watch New Waterford Girl.
Oh, cool.
So great. And it's, you know, it's so funny because years ago somebody borrowed my DVD copy of it. And I was like, who has my DVD? But now you can just get it, so that's nice.
You were like, this isn't a rent-to-own situation. It was
Exactly, yeah.
Great.
And then there's like, if I just am sassy, then I'll watch Heathers. Like, these are all from when I was, you know, in high school or something. Almost, yeah, they almost all are. Heathers, I just find hilarious. You know, it's like all the bullied kids offing all the popular kids, which is like everyone's fantasy. All the bullied people's fantasy. Don't do it at home, kids. But you know, it's good. I mean, I think a part of what we do as storytellers is allow people the catharsis of fantasy. So yeah, there's so many good ones out there. Yeah.
And you grew up in Innisfil, right?
Mostly, we moved there when I was 9.
Wow.
Prior to that, I was born and raised in Lethbridge till the end of grade 4, and then we moved to Innisfil.
Still small towns.
Yeah, Lethbridge is a small city.
Yeah.
And it has like a university and at least one college. And it's just a little bit bigger, like it's a bit more sprawling, and like the Blackfoot presence is so strong there. So it was a bit of a culture shock to move to Innisfil, and there was, to our knowledge, 2 Indigenous families in the whole town. And
wow.
One of the other family also had a daughter named Tara.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So people would confuse us, and we look nothing alike. But, you know, so it is. It goes.
And how do you know when a play you're writing's done, if they're ever done?
Yeah, I don't know if they are. You know, there's that old thing that, you know, a writer is never satisfied, but
yeah,
there are definitely plays that feel really living and continue to evolve. And I guess that's as long as the writer is not dead, then that's a possibility. Like, it's a living thing. I guess like if we shift the question to be, how do you know when it's ready to be staged? When there's nothing shrieking at you during a run through or a stumble through, you know, or if there's nothing that, sometimes what it is when your collaborators who I'm very fortunate that for the most part now, I never work with people who are dicks, and they all have something to contribute. So when they're going, you know, I don't know, I feel like my character this, and if I'm just like, no, you definitely do that. Like, the more certainty I have when questions come into the room, and the more I'm able to articulate my response to why I'm really sure that person has to do that, then I know that I know it as well as can be. And now I need the final collaborators, like the audience. So I think that's how.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely I've sent out first drafts where I'm like, no, I have so many questions. I feel so insecure. I don't want anyone to see this. Here it goes. Hit send, and then just like die, you know? And I refresh your email like every 5 minutes. Did they read it yet?
Yeah. Feedback. Where's feedback? Where's my, what a great draft.
Yeah, totally. Do you love me? Do you love me yet?
And so, like, have you ever gone back and made edits after a work was published? Like Drury and Izzy, would you ever change that?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes the pressure of time is a great gift to that. Drury and Izzy is way better now than the published version. And in large part, it's because of Daryl Cloran when he was the AD at Western Canada Theatre in Kamloops, which is actually sort of some of my home territory.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, actually. And I won't say this is entirely the reason, but it was a part of what kicked my ass, was that air conditioning went down in the building. And it was, honestly, it was inhumane to make people sit through acts that were that long. So, and I really was resisting some suggestions to cuts until the AC went down. Then I was like, this is nonsense. We can't sit in that hot box for that long. And so Daryl's like, oh, okay. So are you considering some of those cuts now? I'm like, yup. And then, and he very artfully suggested some really like surgical cuts that were beautiful and just, of course, made other things pop. So So I made those cuts. So now when I see the published version, I'm like, no, you know, it's like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience where actors get the wrong draft, but they're all printed and they're all handed out and they start reading and you're like, what? I cut that. You know, and they're like, everybody stop. And then you go through and give all the changes. That's what it feels like now. So yeah, that happens a lot.
That's crazy. I love that. Like, I love that play so much. And I've told Tara this, but I wrote like this big essay on it that I used to get into my master's. Like, have that essay. Anyway, I love that. Like, I love
read that. You have to send it to me. You have to send that to me.
I will. It was from like a few years ago, but it got me into my master's, so it must have been fine.
Send it.
And my last question is, what are you working on now and how are you making it through COVID?
Yeah.
Because like also for everyone watching this call, Tara and I were supposed to be en route to South America right now with her show Dear Woman. Right?
Which you secured us that gig.
Yeah. So last year, last Fringe, I went to Edinburgh Fringe with Article 11 and Tara and Andy's show Dear Woman. And I was there with Canada Hub and my job was to go to parties and sell the show. So I did that. And I met this guy in a bar one night at this fancy party with chandeliers and stuff. And my friend from Paris came to see me. Like, it was just one of the best nights. And this guy approached me. He's like, "You're beautiful. Are you Latin?" And I was like, close, but no. Well, not close. But
Yeah, beautiful, yes. Latin, no.
Yeah. Anyway, and then we got to talking, and he told me that he was a producer from Colombia looking for international Indigenous work. And I just went, have I got the show for you? And I like went into high gear, and he came to Dear Woman, and we were supposed to be probably en route right now.
Yeah, at the Teatro Mayor, which is possibly the biggest venue in Bogota.
It would have been insane.
Yeah.
And instead, we're in our places in Calgary and Edmonton. So how are you coping, Tara?
I'm wearing earrings because I'm on camera. How am I coping? It's really, it's kind of all the feelings all the time, which is impossible to maintain. It's like,
yeah.
You know, people talk about the terrible twos for little kids. And I think, I suspect that for 2-year-olds, they're feeling all of the feelings all of the time. And that's why it's really hard for them to be 2. And I feel like I'm 2 right now. Like I can't, I'm just, I'm oscillating all the time emotionally and, you know, finding my strongholds here and there. You know, getting texts or calls from friends helps. Having family, being closer to home now, like being in Mohkinsis and being closer to my mom, all that really helps. But yeah, artist-wise, it's really hard. Like it's hard. It's really difficult to self-motivate now. A few people have approached me for short works, and that was possible. Boca del Lupo in Vancouver commissioned a short play for me for their plays to perform at home. Oh my God, it's like, where are they? Oh, they're here. Hey, I'm going to show you. So they arrive. You can order them to your house, and they arrive in this beautiful box.
Oh my God, that's adorable.
I know. It's like a little personal pizza, and you open it up.
I'll play pizza.
And they send you enough scripts for each character in the play, and then you can read them with your bubble.
Cool.
I know, it's brilliant. This is Giovanni's piece. Giovanni's moving to Calgary. Anyway, so I wrote that, and it's 3 supermodels stuck on a jet on the tarmac, and they're angry because they're not being prioritized, and they're supposed to be being prioritized, and it's during COVID, so they're like, nope, sorry, the airport's at capacity, you have to stay on the jet until whatever, and they're like, so they're incensed, you know? And yeah, so that was really fun to write because it's, at no point will any producer go, we can't put a jet on stage. It's just going to be people in their bubble going, ooh, we're in a jet now. You know, they'll just use their imaginations and they'll be in a jet. So that was fun.
Fun.
And what else? New Harlem Productions, run by Donna Michelle St. Bernard in Toronto, is there. She's amazing. She's like one of the greats, like truly. She has a project where she's commissioning one playwright for each chapter of the final report for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry.
Wow.
So I was assigned chapter 7, which is it's like access to resources kind of stuff. So that was a 10-minute piece, and her plan is to put each play online with the report, and so those in many ways become public property. So, you know, if at any point you're trying to slog your way through the report, which can be, you know, the wording, the verbiage can be kind of inaccessible for some people, you can like shift gears, go into story mode, and just take a break from your brain and engage your heart, and just remember that these are like people who have lives and loves and feelings. So yeah, so I wrote that one, which is, thank God. I was like, please let it come, and it did.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then the other thing, kind of front burnery, is a commission from Prairie Theatre Exchange in Winnipeg. Thomas Morgan Jones asked me to write a piece about climate change. And when he mentioned it, I was like, oh, I don't really know if I can write about science. But then the more we talked about climate change and Winnipeg and just what that city is, and like the kind of vortex of power and fear in that city, I find quite pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So as we had that conversation, what hit me about the thought of climate change was how so often when people die in bodies of water, or their bodies are thrown in bodies of water, when there's a heat wave, that's when those bodies surface. So I started thinking about the Red River and the earth just giving up its secrets and revealing our stolen women and girls, and what that would look like, you know, when most of the population is gone, when most of the water is toxic or gone. And so it's a piece about where just this woman all by herself, she's inspired by Bernadette Smith, who is one of the founders of Drag the Red. So Drag the Red have volunteers with donated boats, and they drive the Red River. They drive on it, and they have this kind of claw thing that drags the bottom of the river to try to find people or evidence of people who are missing. So in my piece, it's the protagonist has that claw thing strapped onto her, and she's just walking the earth trying to find anybody because she's all alone. So it's this piece about, and her ancestor presence is there with her, so that's another character. And she keeps unearthing these women and or girls who, because the world is completely flipped, they have their voices back and they tell her their story.
Oh my God.
So it's like, it's in many ways it's grim, but in many ways it's a story of hope, because you know, it's the thing about controlled burns, like our people used to do. Like when we had controlled burns, forest fires didn't happen as much, you know. So, and after the controlled burns, all those little tiny flowers and growths that, you know, the little creatures like to eat come back. So in many ways it's like burn it down, start over. So in some ways it's hopeful, but I still wrote it, so it's hopefully kind of brutalizing too, so that people wake up.
That sounds like so beautiful.
No.
I'm so excited to read that one. Oh my God.
Tyler's not like you. You'd be like, am I in it?
Am I? Just like who's, oh my God. Totally. But we're doing a nasty interview right now. So I have to behave.
Well, I'm just saying you'd be great in it. So.
Thanks so much, Tara. It's always such a joy to talk to you about your process and your stories, because you just have so many.
Oh. Well, we all do, you know. It's just a question of figuring out how they go through us, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank
you. And thanks so much for everyone for listening in. And I'm just going to do one thing before we stop. I'm going to introduce you all to my puppy, Fawn. Isn't she so cute? This is my COVID project. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. And thanks, Tara, for taking the time to talk to me and record and have everyone listen to your beautiful thoughts.
Thank you for the good medicine of Fawn.
Fawn! Only a Cree girl named her dog Fawn. Like, okay. Bye, everybody. Love you.